Alright, today we're going to break a little bit of the format with the reviews usually, and kind of reiterate an old video that we did. We're going to go through some of my favorite vinyl records that I own. So these are all going to be in alphabetical order, and I'm pulling them kind of based on a combination of just the record itself, how it sounds on vinyl, and also the different features and different things that might be added to the vinyl. So with that, let's get right into it and start off with number 1. So the first record I have is Malibu by Anderson.paak. Now this is an album from last year, and if you listened to it, you probably could tell that it was going to sound good on any sort of analog format. There are a lot of live instrumentation and funky rhythms going on here. So this record is nothing super special as far as the discs go. Double LP on plain black wax, and they're both housed not really in a gatefold, which isn't my favorite thing, but what I really have to emphasize about this record is the sound. This is an immaculate sounding record. All of the live instrumentation and singing is captured so well. I think this is actually a UK import version, but it really sounds good, and I think that almost every pressing I've heard of it sounds immaculate. So I'd really recommend picking this one up at your local record store. Next one is an album that I've been searching for fucking ever. It is Converge with Jane Doe. So if you guys have been hunting down this record or know anything about kind of the aftermarket for punk records, or especially hardcore and metalcore records, you know that this album is fucking hard to get. Or maybe not even hard to get, but it's always a very expensive record. And as you can see, they spared no expense with the packaging here. Jacob Bannon is an incredible artist. Check out his stuff. Everything he does is amazing. And what really makes this album special is in every of the represses, they still include this huge art book where they sort of incorporate lyrics into the artwork itself. So this is for the first song, Concubine, and it has all the words right there with the actual art, and you can go through it. I think it's 24 pages, and each one has its own specific piece. And it starts off with all these lyric pieces, and then eventually gets to some photos of the band at the time they were a 5-piece, and then some credits in the back of the album. And this particular press was amazing. So I got the translucent gold with black wisps. I believe there was 500 copies of this. It was a limited variant, and it looks kind of lame just on its own, but in the light you can really catch all the gold tints. I'm not sure if you guys can see that very well, but they also have a bunch of really weird engravings on the middle. So here it says, "You're so simple-minded, it hurts," which who knows? I don't know what's going on with that, but it's still a very interesting package, and I think it's one of the most intense and sort of complete packages that I own. And to add on to that record specifically, I wanted to mention Death Wish's recent pressing of the Jane Live show. They performed this entire album live at Roadburn Fest and then pressed it onto vinyl. There were 4 different limited covers by different artists who were friends of the band. I got the Floridian Burt Meyer cover, and this particular pressing was on red vinyl. You can't get this specific cover anywhere on the website, but you can still get it on Discogs for kind of a pretty penny, but it's not that bad compared to a lot of other collectible records. They have the Ashley Rose Couture live reinterpretation of it as the main cover, and you can still pick up a pressing at their store of that. And that album, for being a live album, is incredible because it sounds like a studio recording. I mean, there's crowds, and you can obviously tell that it was recorded in the same room altogether, but it is insane, the amount of production and great work that Kurt Ballou does behind the board. So next up, we have one of my favorite records, and if you've watched this from the beginning and saw my old video, I think it was called like Constant Rotation, you've already seen this record. It is Godspeed You Black Emperor with Lift Your Skinny Fists Like Antennas to Heaven. This is probably my number 1 album, if I'm honest with you. And the packaging is immaculate too. Constellation always does a really great job with their full packaging. They don't buy into any of these variants and other ways of kind of making money grabs. So everything they do is very high quality. It's just on plain black vinyl. There's no variants of it. There's no special editions that you can get. And there's just a lot of art and a lot of things going on with this. I've got, I think it's a picture of the band, despite it looking like a totally different sort of genre going on there. But this album is absolutely incredible. It spans and demands the whole space of 2 discs, and so it's, I believe, almost 90 minutes in runtime, and you have these sort of matching prints on either side, on either sleeve, along with some photos, and you saw the credits before. This record is just absolutely incredible. Everything that Constellation does is a home run. They really haven't done any wrong in any of their packaging ever. Fun fact about that one, I actually have that album cover tattooed. So next up is a recent favorite, and you guys can probably already tell that it sounds great on vinyl because it was entirely, maybe not entirely, there was a lot of analog beats and sounds on this album. It is Kendrick Lamar with To Pimp a Butterfly. Now I heard a fun fact somewhere, and I'm not sure how true this is, but I heard that there are no synthetic drums on this album, that everything is live. And I'm not sure if I buy that, but it's a fun little fact to have. And so again, we have this incredible cover that is leagues beyond the damn cover. Don't even fucking talk to me about that. That cover is shit. I mean, the album is good, but the cover is shit. On the inside, we have a lot of credits going on here, some photos of Kendrick Lamar and his friends and family, a little print of Butterfly, and then it almost looks like someone wrote on it, but it's actually part of the packaging. They have the titles written behind the lyrics and the credits. And then down here at the bottom, you have a little bit of Braille, and I'm not exactly sure what that says. I'm pretty sure probably is just To Pimp a Butterfly, but it's a really nice little addition, and it shows how much they were thinking of this packaging. I know this vinyl copy came out a little bit after the album was actually released, and you can really tell that they were taking their time to really make this as great as it could be. That one again is just plain black vinyl. I don't have a ton of colored vinyl. I don't really buy into paying extra money for different colored plastic. So next up we have a band from my hometown, one of my all-time favorite bands, and actually one of my all-time favorite records. It's just such an emotional and just crushing record. It is La Dispute with Wildlife. Now this vinyl version doesn't have the kind of scribbled title in the middle, but I think it lets the photo kind of speak for itself in a very abstract sort of way. I mean, this album is very literal, so I think it's nice to have something that's a little bit abstract about it. So this record is another great double LP, gatefold, all sorts of good stuff in here. And this one actually is a variant. I picked this up at Vertigo Records in Grand Rapids, and they had a variant, or a few different variants, where the second disc is always clear, but the first disc is always a different color. So this one is green. It's got sort of a marbled color. I'm not sure if you can see on that camera what's going on all there. And this album is just a great collection of short stories. It's not really a concept album, but it's a very loose set of ideas of this man trying to figure out his place in the world and how he has handling his life, specifically topics like death and moving away from home and having his life crumble and his passions be sort of abused, especially in the first half. And one of the great additions and the reasons I highlighted this particular record is the little booklet. Now this comes with the vinyl and the CD copy, but you can see, sort of to push this concept, they have all of the lyrics written out. Now, the part of the album that is supposed to be the narrator, the man who's collecting these short stories, is handwritten. So a departure, a note, a poem, and a broken jar are all in his handwritten writing, but then the actual stories are printed. And one of the things I didn't realize until I listened to the album while looking at these lyrics was that not all of the lyrics and all the lines are the story, or there isn't a place where he collects his thoughts at the end. A lot of times they're mixed right in there. So as you can see on, say, St. Paul Missionary Baptist Church Blues, hell of a title, you can see all the different little interjections that the narrator makes into the song. And when listening to it, they don't really do anything to the voice to let you know that it's the narrator, but reading along with the actual album with the lyrics really kind of brings it to light and gives a whole new layer of meaning to a lot of these songs. Here's the second disc, just a plain clear. Nothing really to write home about. I guess these were all in the variants, and then they had different colors for the first disc. I believe there's also a purple version and maybe a blue one, but I'm not exactly sure. They have a lot of different colors of this record. There are a lot of variants, and if you're a collector, I mean, it's sort of a dream for you guys. I probably should take a moment to note that I am not a collector in the sense that a lot of people are with collecting all the different variants or different covers and stuff. Next up is my favorite record from last year. It is Nicholas Jar's Sirens. Now this vinyl actually changed my entire opinion on an album. Maybe not my entire opinion, but I didn't think it was quite as great until I heard the vinyl. Because Nicholas Jar, as is the case with his records always, sounds so much better on vinyl for some reason. I really think that Spaces Only Noise, I really didn't like that record that much until I got it on vinyl. Something about the timbres of the basses and the different synths that he's using just ring through so much clearer on the disc. And this particular one has an extra song, Wildflowers, which I think is about 6 minutes, and it pushes this album from short album with only 6 songs, and it doesn't feel like he could have explored all the ideas, to a complete sort of experience. Now this is only one LP, it's not colored or anything, but it did have the lottery paper scratch-off cover, which you probably should have noted. It's a heavy pressing, just standard black vinyl. It's a really good package with the whole plastic cover and then the 2 sort of sleeves to it. And I should note, this is actually lottery paper, so I scratched off this cover, much to Joseph's horror, because his is pristine. But you can see there's actually, it's a little bit different than what you'll see online. I think the digital copy has a little quarter kind of placed right here as a sort of homage to the actual cover, or what you do with the vinyl edition. And I thought it was a really fun way of sort of letting the listener get involved with the album. One of my personal favorites, obviously. Now next up is a gem that I had to order from Germany because I had been waiting for it forever. This is Set Fire to Flames with Sing's Rain Rebuilder. This is an incredible experiment, piece of art. It's another sort of post-rock ambient. There's some people who called it lowercase, the recording of random sounds and making it into music. But it is I believe a collective of 13 musicians, and they locked themselves, all of them and their engineers and producers, in this house, and they stayed there for weeks to record this album. And what we ended up with was a double album in length, and it is incredible. It's got elements of post-rock, instrumental rock, it's got field recordings and ambient noise galore, and it is so underrated. I don't know why I don't see more people talking about this. And it's been really hard for me to find, especially here in the States. For some reason they're all abroad. But I finally got my hands on a copy, and it is pristine. The entire album plays through without any major surface noise. I think with a lot of these ambient releases, it's really important to get yourself a nice clean copy so you're not having a lot of distractions from the pops and clicks. And I think that is sort of the shortcomings of vinyl, which I know I said earlier, it's really nice and it has a sort of sentimental value that it's so temporary. But when it comes to hearing an ambient track and slight clicks and fuzz are a little bit louder, it's really not that great. But again, with this album, as a lot of bands in this sort of area and collective do, it is a great package. I don't believe this was put out by Constellation. This was actually put out by 130701. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce that, but that's how I said it. It's Alienate Recordings, and they share a lot of members with Godspeed You Black Emperor, but they are not necessarily interchangeable. And this one also came with a nice book of credits and art. And this one has some interesting photos and art, and these weird little tracing paper pages that sort of lay over with text over some of these photos, where then you can see what's behind them later. Really interesting package with a lot of intricacies, and I mean, they really treat it like it's an art form. They're really making an effort to enhance your experience while listening, and I really appreciate that. And another record that I think I showed in my original version of this video is Tim Hecker's Virgins. Now this record is what got me into Tim Hecker, who is now one of my favorite musicians ever. So the vinyl is plain black and almost everything is matted except for this cover photo right in the middle. And you can see that that's actually a little glossy print. And I thought it was such an interesting little simple way to make the packaging that much more interesting. Some abstract, looks like some paint on the middle. Tim Hecker always does a great job with his releases, and I've had some gripes with his albums in the past on vinyl because they oftentimes flow into each other, and they're almost always broken up onto 2 discs, and it does feel like there's a lot of pauses. And on his album, specifically Rave Death, there were some songs where they're in suites, so it's 1, 2, and 3 of In the Fog, and 3 is on the second side. And I think it was just kind of broke the mystique and the whole complete experience of it by breaking up specific song suites. But this album didn't have very many of those suites. They had some callbacks with Virginal 1 and 2. And I believe there's more than one stigmata or stab variation. I'm not exactly sure. But this album flowed much better on vinyl, and I think it really took off some of the harshness that this recording had, because I think some of the digital versions really have some shots of noise that attack the ear a bit, especially if you're listening to something that's not as high of a recording quality. I think it can definitely get a little bit grating, but the vinyl itself softens some of those blows and really allows you to focus on the textures and the compositions that Tim Hecker is making instead of having your ears bleed. Alright, so those were, I don't know how many, I think about 8 of arbitrary number, but a lot of my favorite records. Let me know what some of your favorite packages are and what you really enjoyed in vinyl record collecting.